Hi everyone, welcome to eShe TV. I'm Aekta Kapoor, and today we're going to talk about meditation, purpose, and outrage in a digital world. Now, to take up such an interesting topic, we have a very interesting woman with us today. She's an author. Her name is Gayatri Jayaraman.
Hi.
So, for everyone who isn't familiar with Gayatri's work, she's a writer and an editor. She's been in the Indian media for over 20 years now. And currently, she's a counselor who works using mind, body, and spirit based therapies in Mumbai. She's an author of 4 books and working on her fifth one. Her latest book is called Sit Yourself Down. It's about her first experience at a Vipassana meditation retreat. Ever since she's gone for that, she's been studying Buddhist and humanistic psychology, and she's retrained as a counselor. She's the founder of Shamah in Mumbai. Is that correctly pronounced, Gayatri? Shamah?
Shamaha. Shamaha is a
Shamaha.
Sanskrit
Okay.
word that means mental quiet.
Excellent. And she counsels people and she conducts workshops based on emotive therapies. She is registered at New York University, in fact, to do her second master's degree, this time in counseling for mental health and wellness with an LGBTQ certification. But she has deferred it due to the pandemic. And I'm personally very glad about that because I get to have her with me on the show today. So, Gayatri, thank you so much once again for being here. And you've written about your first Vipassana experience in your book, Sit Yourself Down, which I have reviewed, and I love the book. I went for Vipassana 10 years ago, and it really did change my life. It completely changed the course of my life, and a lot of things in my personal life changed after that. So, how has the being in that meditation practice? You have made it a regular part of your life now. So, how has that worked out for you, and how has it changed your life?
Firstly, thank you, Ekta, for having me on the show. I'm a huge fan of eShe TV and eShe magazine. I love your work, and I think the fact that you are a practitioner, you've been there, and your personal interest in spirituality really shows through in the review that you did. So I just wanted to thank you for that, for your insight, because I think reviews are so much also about the person who's reading, which is why I enjoy reading the reviews. As you know, a lot of people have found Vipassana life changing, and I had a lot of people in my life who have gone for the course. My brother used to go every year for a very long time, and I always wanted to go, but I never had the time. For me personally, I think the biggest change, and now I meditate every morning for an hour, which I don't miss. In the evenings, if I'm able to, I do an additional hour. But that, really depends on routines and things like that. And I must tell you that my first teacher called me up a couple of weeks ago and said, how many times are you meditating? He said, are you meditating regularly? I said, yes, sir. He said, how often? So, being students, we all exaggerate. So I said, so 2 hours a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. He said, usse kya hoga? So here I'm thinking I'm some, great person, do fixed 1 hour. So just to clarify that when I say 1 hour, the people who actually meditate on a regular basis are like, "Arey, ye to bachchi hai," So
Actually, they said when you meditate, at least that's what they said when I was at the camp, that you need less of sleep. So it's not like you're
yeah.
taking time away from your daily routine. You're actually taking time out from your sleep time.
Correct, correct. And just to say, qualify that meditating 1 hour, even 2 hours a day is nothing for people who are seriously into it. So I'm very much a novice and a student practitioner. So everything that I'm going to say in this interview, request you and the audience to treat it as the words of somebody who's very enthralled by a new process. And something that my teacher in Buddhist psychology also says very often is, and which is a sort of principle of Zen Buddhism, is uh, your practice has to be boring. The very
Boring.
fact that it has to be boring. When the very fact that I've written a book about it and I have so many thoughts about it, show you that I'm not an expert. If I was an expert, there would be nothing to say because I would be in stillness. I would not be excited, about the whole experience. So,
Mm.
just qualifying my very low level of practice, the ways in which it's sort of changed my life to sort of answer your question is I find myself very clear. It's like the path is very clear. There is no distortion. There is no confusion. There is no clutter. It feels like when you've done your Diwali spring cleaning, let's being seasonal right now, and your house is spotless. And only the things you need and want and that spark you joy are part of your home. Things you may need are put away in storage, and it's fresh. Every day is fresh. So there is a great clarity that comes from that, which allows you to not do things that do not serve a purpose. So you're not saying things, you're not participating in things, you're not tweeting, you're not making needless phone calls, you're not watching needless shows. It's not that there is no enjoyment. There's a lot more enjoyment because it's limited to things that you truly enjoy.
Mm.
There
So
is
that
no
kind of
need.
awareness has come in.
Yeah. So what happens when that clarity comes is it's very lean. Your existence becomes very lean. I don't apply for jobs I don't want. Even if I may need, say, I need an income. Okay. Uh, I won't write things today just because somebody's paying me. I won't, apply. I won't want to be part of something that is not me. And, we all make those compromises through our lives, as a result of which we end up living a very compromised life. And the comfort of being able to say no, I think, is very, very empowering. Because when you say no to the things that do not contribute to you, every single thing you are then doing through the day is contributing to you, which makes you much more solid.
Mm.
So I would say that is the biggest change. In smaller ways, I don't feel two things. I've said this before, I think. Um, I don't feel fear and I don't feel anger. And I think the removal of these two things is a huge gain.
Mm.
Because, and I first realized it thanks to the lockdown and the pandemic, when I saw a lot of people around me as also clients, patients who came to me and feel this anxiety. And at some point, I had to step back and say, but wait a minute, why am I not feeling it? So I went to my therapist and I said, I need a session because I'm not feeling anxiety. So what is wrong with me? And, I had to go through a whole session where am I numbing it? Am I hiding it? Am I avoiding, being real with myself? And then I realized because what a process of continuous and daily meditation does is it puts a gap between yourself and in sensory input, which you would know, being a practitioner yourself. So because of that, you are cocooned. So it's almost like there is this force field and things bounce off you. So nothing that you don't want to include into your mental arena penetrates.
Mm.
Because the practice is rigorous, if it's every day, then that's an automatic filter. It takes out anything that does not contribute to you.
Mm.
So, a lot of this anxiety is because I don't live in the future. I don't mind what happens tomorrow. You
Mm.
know?
I think this is all the pandemic has really taught us all to make peace with the
Yeah.
uncertainty, that
Yeah.
has Though, of course, years of meditation can also do that for you. But we've all had a crash course, I think, in the last few months in many
Yeah,
ways.
yeah, it's a very intense couple of months, and I think we've all learnt it whether we meditate or not.
Yeah.
In fact, there are more people now, I think, taking to meditation because they see the value in that moment,
Yes.
and meditation is about the moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So our in our spiritual tradition, our gurus say that this whole world is Maya, an illusion.
yeah.
So the question arises, and you and I were discussing this earlier. Why does then one, need to do anything? If everything is a Maya, why do you bother to try a new venture, or why do you, try anything at all? Anything new in your life? Then you would just want to just go with the flow, right? If everything is just Maya. So what has been your learning in this?
So, actually, I was thinking about that even today when I was dressing up. If everything of Maya, why comb my hair? Why put on lipstick? Why put on an earring? His body is immaterial. It's just everybody has the same body, and everybody's body is Maya. But this is the question that philosophy has been studying for centuries. Whether it's Western philosophy, whether it's Plato, whether it's Aristotle, whether it's the Vedas, Upanishads, whether it's Buddhism, all systems of philosophy have basically asked us what is reality, um, and that's the quest of all religion. But and the simple truth is this: that we all cannot know reality, absolute reality beyond a point. But that doesn't mean that two things. One, that we assume what we live is reality, and second, that we disregard our present reality.
Hmm.
So, one thing my teacher of Buddhist psychology, Asha Pillai Balsara, said to me when I asked her this question, and she's a wonderful teacher, was don't over exaggerate the ultimate truth and don't undermine the relative truth. Just because there's an ultimate truth doesn't mean your relative truth doesn't exist. Just because your relative truth exists does not mean your ultimate truth does not exist. That is the middle path. That is equanimity, that is balance, which even Arjuna on the battlefield, this is what Krishna was teaching him. That there is an ultimate reality, but your truth is here. You're on the battlefield. What do you have to do? What is your duty? What is your karma driving you towards? Whether it's the Gita or whether it is the words of Gautama the Buddha, they are not abstract philosophies. They are here, they are in life, they are rooted in where we are. And if you cannot take that philosophy and translate it into your daily life, you have not understood the philosophy, or it is not a valid philosophy, right? And so it's like a child that sees a bubble.
Hmm.
That bubble is not going to last for more than not even a whole minute, 30 seconds. But a child can laugh. You can enjoy it. You can see it floating and knowing that it's going to disappear. And when it disappears, that's another joy. Oh God, where did it go? And if we can all bring that attitude to our daily lives, this is a great relationship. This is a wonderful job. This is, a great house I live in. I have these fantastic friends. Tomorrow, if they're gone, oh, where did they go? But what joy I had when they came. And that is life. It's that middle path. And the same thing with dukkha, sorrow. It's here. How much it's making me cry. Hey, it's gone. All our sorrows pass, all our joys pass. There is not one. There is not one that lasts. The greatest joy or the greatest sorrow has to pass. That is the truth, right?
To see life as a 80-year bubble or 100-year bubble if you're lucky, but it's a bubble after all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the Buddha called it budbule. Life has to be seen as budbule, bubbles. He said, see life as budbule, a flickering lamp. Um, uh, I think he said a cloud in the sky. this is life. So we're here very momentarily. If you believe in Hinduism, then you know that Brahma's concept of time is so different from ours. We are just a fraction of a those of us who have dogs or cats know that their
Mm.
lifespan is so much shorter than ours.
Mm.
So what are we crying about? Just
But
enjoy every moment that comes.
yeah, but this leads me to the next question that, though we may think, what are we crying about? And we may have certain personal desires, we may have certain personal
Yeah.
missions. We want to achieve something which sometimes may go against, what our loved ones may want for us, or it may even go against what our roles and responsibilities in life are supposed to be. I mean, for an example, even the Buddha left his family, and so somebody had to sacrifice for him to achieve enlightenment. And nobody thinks about what his wife must have. It wasn't her choice to live as a single mother while her husband, achieved enlightenment and took the world on a new direction. So, and I mean, as a woman also, I find myself coming up against this question so many times. There are so many moments when you need to choose between your purpose versus your roles and your responsibilities in life. And you may do your best, but you either compromise on one or the other, and or you don't, or sometimes you do both together. uh, it's a, I think for me at least, it's been a daily quest, trying to balance these two. So why does this why does this happen? Why do we have to choose between the two? Why can't we have them both?
Um, that's a really good question. Uh, and I'd like to point out also that the Buddha had to leave his wife, and because of the urge to seek enlightenment. Uh, so did Adi Shankara have to leave his mother, and these are ways of the. So in our Indic philosophies, we tend to look at it as the cycle of samsara, right? That we need to
Hmm.
exit,
Right.
and everything we're doing is the cycle of samsara.
Hmm.
But those who have a higher calling, and I'm going to answer this from the point of view of my great grandfather, who was a chartered accountant to the British oil company in Persia, in Iran. And when he and my grandmother came back, and she had a great grandmother, and she had, I think, 5 or 6 children,
Hmm.
he said, I'm going to Kashi. And he took sannyas and he disappeared.
Hmm.
And she was alone with her children, an uneducated woman in a more traditional, more ancient India.
Hmm.
And she had to get my grandmother married to somebody who
Hmm.
was almost 15 years her senior.
Okay.
I think my grandfather was older than my great grandmother when he married my grandmother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And then my mother was born, and then I'm here. So this is very much a question that's part of my personal, and it's something that I've thought of a lot, because initially there is anger. How could he do that to a woman? But today, I also have an understanding that comes from the philosophy of dependent arising, which is the principle that nothing in life has a single cause.
Hmm.
Dependent arising was a philosophy that the Buddha taught, which said that everything starts with an intention. The intention has a cause, is influenced by conditions, and then it has an effect. All you and I can do, and this is the principle of everything around us, you can plant a seed, and my intention is for that seed to grow. But it needs sunlight, it needs rain, it needs wind, it needs that area not to have a drought, not to have a flood, a cow not to come along and eat it. So many factors that are not in our control, right? And then it will have an effect. Or it may have an effect completely different to what we had
You
intended.
want.
It may
Hmm.
be, yeah. So my intention may be to live sustainably, but that intention is influenced by causes and conditions that are out of my control. So I cannot in any way know the outcome of what I'm going to do. All I can do is set an intention with my purest motive and say, let me not harm anybody. Let me seek good. Right? So I think what happens when you see this cause condition effect is there is less blame for others. Somebody who's acting as an obstacle, somebody who has done harm to us, is also coming from their own chain of cause, condition, and effect, which they don't know anything about. So we're all sort of players in this Maya. I don't know how I impact you. You don't know how I impact me. We're sort of like waves in the ocean. One rises, the other falls. There is impact. It's the butterfly's wing. We are not conscious of all of it. The process of meditation allows us to be a little more conscious. A little more. Also psychology, a little more. Okay? But even then, that complete awareness is not there. The only thing we can do is set those pure intentions, do it to the best of our ability, and this is why they say release the outcome. Because you cannot control the outcome, you cannot know the outcome. It's a completely futile. When it comes to pursuing the aspect of enlightenment at the cost of others, it's the same question that comes up with Gandhi, right? What must his family have suffered for the things that he decided to do for this nation? My answer to that is that, we think that the meditative life or the compassionate life should be sweet. A person who is meditating must never be angry, must never get involved in things that are political, social, activist, must not, you sit there, commercial even, okay? But the meditative life is a part of the everyday fabric of society. It has to seep into everything. And sometimes to be compassionate, and this is a metaphor that comes up a lot in Buddhist meditations, is be a mother to yourself. To be a mother is to tell your child no, is to give him a punishment, is to take away the things that he's putting in his mouth. It's to scold. It's to make him sit in the corner. It's to make him redo his homework. It's to tell him you can't, to take away his privileges. There's a lot in compassion. I would be a bad mother if I didn't do those things. Right? Being a mother to yourself is also to deprive yourself. It is also sometimes to deprive others. Because when you reach that space of universality, there is sameness. When you're Adi Shankara, your mother is important in a material sense and you pay tribute, you pay obeisance. But your mother is also out there on the street begging for food. Your mother is also a woman who's suffering domestic violence. Your wife is also, your duty to humanity. So we see these things in very, very narrow senses. Imagine what our independence movement would have been without Gandhi. And because we see him as married and with these children, and those are his responsibilities. But when you become that universal element, nobody is lesser or greater. You see thousands suffering, and your duty is also to them. So at that moment, which is why the meditative process needs to give you clarity, what is your higher compassion for? And that's a choice that we each have to make every day. It's not easy. It's going to hurt you sometimes to make that choice. But with your compassion and with your clarity, if you have to answer the question, what in this is the highest good? Regardless of whom it may hurt in the process, then you have to follow that. And you will know. Each of us knows, and that is dharma. That is our dharma in each situation. The butcher's dharma is to kill. We are nobody to sit here and tell him he is wrong,
Hmm.
because that is a vocation given to him. We are nobody to say only the activist on the street is fighting for the greater good. A mother in the home is fighting for the greater good in her own way.
Hmm.
We can't say it's not that some fights are better fights and some fights are not. We don't know the ways in which these things play out. The
Hmm.
only thing we can do is each of us in our circumstance, in our everyday life, constantly ask ourselves this question: is my intention pure? Am I
Hmm.
acting for the greater good? Am I doing the best that I can? Am I contemplating the impact of this? Can I do my best and let go of the result?
Nishkam Karma Yoga.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, that also now makes me think about the fact that you are a journalist. I mean, you have been following the news. You're on social media. You're reading Twitter. You're reading Facebook. You're coming across, this daily sensory overload of uh, all the negative things that are happening in the world. Unfortunately, news picks up the negative faster than it picks up the positive. So how do you, I mean, as a journalist who's also on a spiritual path, how do you deal with all this news and all this about violence and injustices happening everywhere in the world? Do you feel outraged? How do you respond, and how has your response changed now from what it used to be earlier?
So I was a total clickbait journalist. I participated in the outrage wholeheartedly. I helped drive it in some parts.
Okay.
One of the things that after Vipassana is because of this pause between the input and your response. It's not that I don't feel sad or hurt or disappointed in what's happening. I do see what's happening around, but I don't always type out that tweet or that article today. One is because I don't feel the need to react to everything that's arising.
Hmm.
I also don't believe that that is the only way to respond.
Hmm.
For instance, the migrant movement, I would sit and ask myself, can I go down on the street quietly and with some food parcels and feed some people who are passing? Is a tweet really going to make a difference? And don't get me wrong, there are people like Barkha, what she did going on the road with the camera. It made a difference. It made a difference to policy. Do I think my tweeting about it is making a difference? No. So it's again not a blanket. There are some very amazing journalists out there doing work that, for instance, um, uncovering a lot of truths that have come to light in the last couple of months, which we have been outraged by. And we
Yeah.
needed to see that. The world needed to see that. India needed to see that. So, what they are doing, they are driven by a purpose. They're fulfilling that purpose, and it has its outcome, which is shedding light on what's really happening. Do all of us have that same purpose? I don't think so. I think we need to evaluate, right? Everybody doesn't protest or dissent in the same way.
Hmm.
We all have our own ways of registering that protest or contributing to change. For me personally, a lot of this change towards becoming a counselor is also realizing that I have contributed to harm. And a almost unspoken vow is I will not contribute to harm anymore. And if I have to be silent, if I have to have fewer followers, if I have to have fewer opportunities to write, then that is fine. But today I will not write and put out something that is contributing to harm in the world anymore. I will not earn my money that way. And this is a very, I think, if you've been to Vipassana, you know that S.N. Goenka says this in one of his discourses. He says, novices and practitioners are bound to introspect and ask, where does the money that I'm earning come from? What is it coming from? And yes, dependent arising, I cannot see all the outcomes, influences, causes, conditions of my work. But whatever I can consciously limit, I will limit. And that means holding back my words or thoughts. So it's not that we don't feel the outrage, we do. But the constant self evaluation becomes necessary. And I also think a fundamental change has been I no longer believe that change comes from outward in. I don't believe that when society changes, we will all be in a wonderful place. My view has been completely inverted. As a journalist, I was constantly sitting there and saying, "You're doing this wrong. You're saying this wrong. You need to change this." Today, my onus is forced on me. And when the onus is forced on me, then my question is, what am I doing that's contributing to this harm? And that first has to be weeded out. And if everybody sat and did that, we would change the world one by one. There are a lot of things we can do as a group, as a collective, as individuals, in our own spaces. And the sort of clarity to know what needs to be done here is a response. The outrage is a reaction. And we have an obligation to shift from a reaction to a response. Because when we are in a reaction, what is happening controls us. When we are in a response, we are controlling what will happen next.
So, in your book, you also talked about how you could feel the sensations in your body and you could correlate how these sensations were connected to certain episodes in your life or certain emotions you must have held. And you've also written about this, about how the language that we use, it reflects this. Like we use the phrase, my blood boils, or
Yeah.
I'm shaking with fear. So the language is also reflecting how the body is reacting to certain emotions. So how do these emotions affect us in the body? I mean, they're lying there for years and years, and sometimes we even go through traumas that we don't want to go through that, but we're holding on to it. It's lying in our body for so many years together. So now that you're a counselor, you're also healing people. Tell us, what are the repercussions of holding these emotions in the body, and how do you recommend that we should deal with these kind of things?
That's such a great question, Ekta, because, as they say, the trauma sits on the body. And we like to think of mental health as something that will happen when we break down. And then maybe we will go and see a counselor, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. But the thing is, the signs of that breakdown in the making are living with us now. It's on our bodies today. And one thing we learn through the meditative process is how to observe our bodies very keenly. Um, it's a simple biological fact. Like, for instance, our hair is growing every day, our nails are growing longer. I have a small burn on my hand here that might leave a burning sensation. These are small things that we become numb to in our day-to-day lives. And it's a biological fact, a physiological fact, that the cells of the skin, of the epidermis, for instance, replace themselves, I think, once every 29 days. So, at a very cellular level, there is change happening within on our bodies on a daily basis that we are completely ignoring, immune to. When you become mindful, when you sit and observe yourself, you are still, I'm sure the much more experienced practitioners go down to that cellular level. You are even able to just see those aches and pains that are just below the surface. Like, it could be a severe backache that you've ignored for days because you've just not noticed it because you've been so busy. It's not so much about seeing why. It's about seeing what. What am I carrying on my body? What about this pain is a message that I need to learn? What is it conveying to me? Where has it come from? Because then you start realizing, when you ask those questions, you realize, I don't know myself. Who am I to know another? Who am I to get into a relationship where I expect my partner to be 100% known to me when I do not even know what I'm carrying on my body? I don't know where my anger lies. I don't know where my happiness lies. And in the reference that you made, I gave the example of, just something that I ask my clients to do is close your eyes and think of a favorite food. It can be your mother's kheer, it can be some sabzi, it can be a samosa, pizza, something that is a choice food for you. And even when you just talk about it or think about it, you'll realize your mouth starts salivating. You will feel a sort of craving sensation somewhere in your stomach. Your fingers will itch to go to the Zomato, Swiggy order. And this is how even the most pleasant sensations has an instant physiological response. We physically react. And the same thing is with anger. And we see this when we see people shouting and screaming on our TV sets in news, while they're conveying the news. They are angry. They're physically angry. They are pumped up. Their adrenaline is rushing. Their blood pressure is high. Their eyes are wider. You can
The eyes
watch
are
the
popping
body
out.
signs. Eyes are popping out. Sometimes they'll spit as they talk because they're talking so fast. The words are running into each other, right? Their shoulders change. The position changes. They're like this, right? That's a fighting stance. So they're not leaning in. A lot of them are leaning back. So there's a lot of physical changes that have to happen for you to express anger. The physical changes have to happen for you to express joy. So imagine being in a situation where everything is a big enough provocation for you to respond. And you are constantly reacting, and you're constantly outraging, and you're constantly angry. What is the physical impact to your body? Right? So for you cannot be a calm person if you're in that heightened state all the time, either with joy or with anger. And when you sit down and start observing your body, you will see that and it's not what's happening now. Sometimes we're carrying the impact of something somebody said to us 20 years ago. So many things that we have put aside because they create this response in us. We bury. And our entire lives are sort of dedicated to avoidance. And there's one thing that is very much part of Gestalt psychology, as is with Buddhism, is the only way past pain is through. Okay? The only way to resolve it is, I would recommend a combination of meditation and therapy, because I think therapy sort of is a very structured way of examining what's lying in the subconscious. Meditation gives you depth. It takes you very deep. But sometimes when you go very deep, a lot can come out and you may not know how to process it. So it's good to have a combination of meditation and therapy, because then therapy gives you tools by which to process that pain. So when you meditate, you may know that I feel this backache. I know what it's linked to, but I don't know what to do with that, because knowledge alone is not awareness. So when you have the guidance of a therapist, of a psychologist, you are given systems by which to release that pain. Or walk through it. You have a companion who is with you on your journey, which is very important. You're not doing it alone.
Right. So you recommend a combination of meditation and therapy, especially for somebody who's holding on to a lot of trauma and in their body
Definitely.
without realizing it maybe.
In fact, if there are people with a lot of PTSD, a lot of abuse, violence, please don't do it on your own. Please do not do it on your own, because the body and the mind have a way of completely suppressing and repressing trauma,
Yeah.
which when it comes up suddenly is not good for you. So if you know you've been through these traumatic times in your life, please do not get into a meditative process without the guidance of an experienced therapist.
Well, to round up all what we've discussed today, a final question for you. It's a little abstract, but I mean, you can answer in whatever way you think the viewers would be able to understand. What, according to you, is the true purpose of life?
That's a really deep question. And I'm just a novice and a student. At a very surface level, I would say the purpose of life is to just be okay. Be okay with yourself, be okay with your mind, be okay with your environment, be okay with your relationships. Exist in a harmonious way. One of the Zen koans that I really love is by Dogen Zenji, who was a Zen master in the 13th century. And he said, how are we to exist in this world? Exist as the bird flies through the sky, leaving no trace of itself, or as fish through the water. And I think that's pretty much it. If we can pass through this life with stillness, and I don't think stillness is nothing. If it, as my teacher likes to say, if you think zero means nothing, then just remove all the zeros from your paycheck. It's a value, right? And in a world that is in a constant state of chaos, upheaval, it's like this ocean which is constantly in a storm. To be a point of stillness is to radiate a sense of calm, which other people can cling on to like a life raft. And yet to leave no impact. There is no detritus, there's no residue, there's no littering. You know, it's just be.
No carbon footprint. No, any footprint actually.
No footprint. I would be very happy to be extremely unknown.
Wow.
Because then you've become zero, right? And zero, and I know there are people who like to say this religion is against that religion, but at the end of the day, the Buddhists talk about shunyata, which is nothing, and Hinduism talks about purnata, which is fullness, which if you see is the same thing seen from both sides. A fullness becomes a nothingness, and that is completion. When there's completion, there's no differentiation. You're not different from anything.
I once
And that
remember,
is
sorry, I just, when you were talking about, I just remembered once I'd attended this meditation workshop, and the lady next to me, she was not a very old woman, maybe middle-aged, and we had our eyes closed for a long period of time. And I remember thinking that I'm sitting alone. But when I opened my eyes, there was a lady next to me. But her presence was so light that I felt that there was nobody there. So she had
exactly.
no carbon footprint at all. Like you couldn't feel her presence. She was so light, and that's when I thought how evolved she must be. And at least it was my first experience of being with somebody, spending an hour with somebody, and not having any sense of heaviness or any negative, positive, nothing. It was a shunyata actually. So I
Yeah,
just remembered that when you spoke.
absolutely. That's so apt because that nothingness is what allows everything else to have value. When you're the zero, the one has value, the two has value.
Mm.
So if we can allow others to have that value, we move from seeking it for ourselves to trying to give it to others. We become nothing, you know, and that's so important. That lifts up the whole world to be nothing.
It sounds so strange to say that, but that's the truth of spirituality, you know. You actually, it's a
Yeah.
process of neti neti. It's reducing and removing rather than adding anything on.
It's also not taking, to reach a point where we are not taking, because always the giver is higher than the taker, and the giver can only give when they are full, and they can only be full when there's nothing to take. It's only a giving. To reach that point, if you look at people like the Dalai Lama, or Aurobindo, or Ramana Maharshi, it's only a giving. There's no taking.
Mm.
And to reach that is really, I think is the aim.
Yeah. Well, you've given me a lot to think about. Thank you so much for coming today on eShe TV. And I've thoroughly enjoyed our discussion, and I hope our viewers are able to take away something from this. And everybody will be in touch. I'm going to leave you with a visual of Gayatri's book. Please do read it. It's a beautiful book, and it's something that's going to probably motivate you to start on your new journey towards Vipassana and towards inner growth and self knowledge. So thanks once again, Gayatri, for being here today, and
Thank you
all
so
the
much.
best. All the best, and I wish you all the best in your spiritual journey, in your writing journey, and of course in New York whenever you do get there after the pandemic. And may you reach a lot of greater heights from this point forward. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for being here, and see you next week on eShe TV. Bye bye.